I ended up making a decision I was quite surprised by, which was to go on, I guess, a 5-day tourist trip to the Amazon. So for me it involved a 11-hour bus journey to a place called Lago Agrio, which means sour lake. It's kind of one of the centres of the oil industry in that area of Ecuador. So from Lago Agrio you have the offices and the big kind of the big buildings that run the pipelines. And in this area, Lago Agrio, which means sour lake, and it's Texaco that's had a lot of their time there, and Exxon, so it's kind of a relationship with those two multinationals. It's a very run-down town that was built in the 70s where there was this big oil boom. And what was quite sickening was you're surrounded by hotels and restaurants, all, in Spanish entitled Black Gold. And you look around and you see people, who are leaving at 4 or 5 in the morning to go and work, for the oil company. There's no riches there, There might be black gold, but they're not experiencing the gold. They're almost just experiencing the black, which is, the oil spills, which is, the tearing down, the deforestation that's gone on. So Lago Agrio used to be primary rainforest 40 years ago. Now it's a 3 or 4 hour drive to kind of touch primary rainforest. There's a lot of people in Ecuador think we need to keep extracting this oil, our economy's based on it. So communities that are saying we don't want you to push further and further and further to where we are. You want health, you want housing, you want education. How are we going to pay for that? And I think there's very much this thinking that's based around the current economic system that we have. That the current economic system, within that, we're going to have to keep exploiting our resources if you want these basic needs. But certainly what we don't have is kind of, a just system where in some ways some of those communities could say, yeah, let's have some extraction, but let us have that money and use that money to create our own economic alternatives for the future. There are none. The only jobs you're going to get are on the land or working for the oil company. So I chatted with a guy who was one of the guides at the Cuyabeno Lodge, and I spoke to him about this whole idea of ecotourism. And he kind of laughed and said, no, there is no ecotourism. The best we can do is make that tourism sustainable. But what he did really make me realise is while I have these issues with ecotourism, with the fact that I took a bus, but most people fly for 30 minutes from Quito, the capital city, to Lago Agrio to then get the rest of the transport to visit the Amazon. So there's all these 3 and 5 day package tours with people flying to the Galapagos Islands or flying to different parts of the Amazon to be eco-tourists. It never failed to surprise me that people don't see the hypocrisy in that. And he said, no, it can't be ecotourism, but the best we can ask for is some level of sustainability. And at least while we have some level of tourism here, it's easier for us to hold off exploration of oil because we're generating some kind of economic output. These communities are forced to have a monetary relationship with the rest of the world. It's not ideal, but that's where they've got to now. So how else would they make money here? The only other way of making money would be coca. And with the coca growing, with them come the fumigations and the militarisation of the area. And that would destroy the rainforest in as quick a time as having some tourists flying in. Ecuador left me very much with this sense of where do we go with this information? How do we move forward with the impacts that we've had as the North on the South and continue to have? And if the only way of the people of Ecuador can protect their land is to invite more and more and more of us to fly to South America, to then fly around their country, to consume their culture. To me, that doesn't feel like a long-term answer. We need to be looking at much bigger alternatives, because for me that can't be a long-term sustainable answer. And it can't be about making the global south a zoo for us in the north to consume and protect. And that's how much it feels a bit like we'll protect this, a bit like you protect elephants or you'll protect a rhino because they're dying out. And I think that suggests that we don't see ourselves as all, one part of humanity. If we, I'll help you because in in effect it's protecting myself, and because I love myself I've got to love you. It became very clear to me when I spent one evening chatting with two Colombian men on a small fishing village and an island in the north coast of Colombia. And from this tropical, paradise-like island, you would see huge freight ships travelling past, and those freight ships would be dole ships with bananas leaving from North Colombia and heading up to North America, or there would be freight ships of coal coming from places like the Cerrejón mine and a Drummond mine further south. Because we saw this ship go by, and a couple of the guys said, we hop those ships, don't you? You hop those ships? We're talking massive freight ships. And in the middle of the night, they would take the boat out, bring it up, a tiny fishing boat up alongside this huge steamliner, hook onto the liner and climb aboard. And they'd climb aboard with some water, some bread and some sugar cane. And that they'd only take the boats to North America because the trip was a bit shorter. For me, it was such a clear, visual and tangible example of people following their wealth. The coal, the diamonds, the gold, the bananas of countries like Colombia are taken away and they're shipped away, and the profits aren't shipped back. And so people, quite understandably are going to follow those profits, and almost they're following their own territory, they're following their own land that's disappearing to the north. So when we talk about, battening down the hatches in North America, that are building a big wall with the Mexican border, when we look at this, fortress Europe that we've got, there's this sense that we're going to be inundated by people, and we've done nothing to invite them. Why would they want to come here? It's again back to this social justice and environmental justice. We have a debt that we're not repaying, and that debt's getting bigger and bigger. We're continuing to extract and not give back the wealth. And for me, it's quite understandable that people are going to follow that wealth. And for me, not only is it understandable, I stand in solidarity with those people. I don't say, well, there's too many, we're going to be swamped. I don't think we are going to be swamped in this country, but if people are concerned that we might, what they need to be doing is not battening down the hatches, but looking at why are people on the move, and what can we do to enable people to live in their own homelands peaceably and, sustainably.